A chief judge in Miami, Chief Judge Cecilia Altanaga, is right in the middle of a corruption scandal that's being accused against the Department of Justice by the former CIA director John Brennan and his lawyers. They wrote a 16-page letter to Judge Altanaga, which effectively says the Department of Justice is corruptly trying to steer a case, an investigation, a grand jury proceeding against Brennan to their favorite judge, Judge Cannon in Fort Pierce, using their new favorite U.S. prosecutor, a guy down in Miami named Jason Redding Quinones, who's a friend of Pam Bondi's, who's a friend of Mike Davis, the right-wing influencer for the administration. And they're accusing the administration, the Department of Justice, of not only being captured by Donald Trump, but that they are steering the case to Judge Cannon on purpose. Now, they didn't go as far as to say Judge Cannon is corrupt, but in their 16-page letter, they did list a series of decisions by Judge Cannon that give off the appearance of impropriety and would suggest to the public why Trump wants the case there, especially, according to the letter, the investigation or the criminal targeting of John Brennan was rejected by a series of other U.S. attorneys not named Jason Redding Quinones, like in the Eastern District of Pennsylvania and the Eastern District of Virginia. But it gets worse because now Pam Bondi has taken the bait and she's now responded to the media going after Brennan in the media while he's the target of a prosecution, which is also a violation of grand jury proceedings as well, and making a comment to the press saying that he's a bad actor and his lawyers are bad actors, and they're just trying to what? Trying to call out a corruption scandal being led by you at the Department of Justice. I'm Michael Popok. You're on the MeidasTouch Network. Let's get to it. Off the weekend, we had the 16-page letter that was sent. I'm going to read to you from parts of it. But let me tell you first how we got here. Roger Stone has been doing Donald Trump's bidding for a long time, going after his political enemies. And recently, Roger Stone put the crosshairs on the back of former CIA Director John Brennan for the crime, apparently, of investigating whether Russia was colluding with Donald Trump back in 2016 to win the election, and issuing a report about it, along with 30 or more other members of the intelligence community. So Roger Stone, at the behest of Donald Trump, goes on, I don't know where, Breitbart or CNN, and he gives the following statement. Here's Roger Stone. Let's play it about John Brennan.
CIA report this week tells us essentially what John Durham's report already told us, that John Brennan, who admits to being a communist, John Brennan, who signed the visas for 4 of the 8 hijackers who attacked America on 9/11. John Brennan, who got caught red-handed spying on a Senate committee investigating his illegal use of torture. John Brennan, who pushed to include the phony Steele dossier in the intelligence community assessment given to President Obama so that they could rationalize Crossfire Hurricane to try to remove a duly elected president. Why hasn't he been arrested? When are 29 FBI agents going to storm his home at 6 o'clock in the morning like they did to me? John Brennan is an arrogant criminal, and it's time, Pam, to scoop him up. And while you're at it, you might as well grab James Comey, because there is more than sufficient evidence to charge both of them. And for those who say, oh no, the statute of limitations has run out, not on the crime of treason, it hasn't.
So do you think they will be, because they've been looked into recently?
I think the public pressure now will be so great that they will be prosecuted. The other problem you have then is, if you go to D.C. where there's not a single non-political judge and where you cannot get an honest, unrigged jury, it's very hard to get convictions in D.C. Ask General Flynn, or I can tell you all about it.
All right. Now watch. This is like a lateral play in football. You know, this is like where the quarterback laterals it to a running back laterals it to a wide receiver, back to the running back, try to score the touchdown. So you got the first lateral from Trump over to Roger Stone. Now you hand it off to Mike Davis. Mike Davis, this right-wing guy who's constantly doing the bidding of the Department of Justice. And he's been accused in the letter, the 16-page letter, which I have up on Legal AF Substack, of actually leaking grand jury information. That's a big no-no on behalf of the Department of Justice. You be the judge. Here's Mike Davis, who happens to be friends with Jason Reading Quinones, the U.S. attorney in Miami, handpicked by Donald Trump to bring a case against Brennan up with Judge Cannon. You see the links here? Here is Mike Davis about John Brennan. Play it.
So the Justice Department sources telling Fox that some of the head honchos of the Russiagate regime are now under criminal investigation. Former CIA Director John Brennan and former FBI Director James Comey. The current CIA Director John Ratcliffe referring evidence of wrongdoing to FBI Director Kash Patel, which sparked the probe. President Trump commented on it today.
I think they're very dishonest people. I think they're crooked as hell. And maybe they have to pay a price for that. I believe they are truly bad people and dishonest people. So whatever happens, happens.
But Brennan, well, he thinks that Trump needs to just let it go. Listen.
Move on, get over it. But clearly, Donald Trump, believes that this is something that I think continues to need to be looked at and criticized. But again, I stand behind the assessment.
So, Mike, we're still learning the details of the full scope of the criminal investigation, but Fox reported that two sources described the FBI's view of the duo's interactions as conspiracy, which could open up a wide range of potential prosecutorial options. What would that conspiracy be, and what does that mean for Brennan and Comey?
I've been saying this for years, going back to the Mar-a-Lago raid, the unprecedented, unnecessary, and unlawful raid on the office of former President Trump for presidential records he's allowed to have under the Presidential Records Act. You had the Obama White House, President Obama, Vice President Biden, the Attorney General, the FBI Director Comey, the CIA Director Brennan, and many others. They made up the Russian collusion hoax against President Trump. They got an illegal spy warrant on him by lying to the FISA court. They continued to spy on him when President Trump was the president of the United States. This is an obvious criminal conspiracy against rights under 18 USC Section 241. And I would say to Mr. Brennan, nobody's above the law, so you better lawyer up, buddy.
Now, if you think I'm making it up, hopefully you don't after years and years of my commentary and reporting, let me show you a photo of a very happy Mike Davis with Jason Reading Quinones talking about justice is coming. Let's play. Let's show those photos. All right. See the connective tissue? And then there's a connection between Pam Bondi and Jason Reading Quinones as well. He just got confirmed by the Senate. He's one of the few that gets confirmed by the Senate under Donald Trump. And the first thing he does is, where can I bring the case? And let me explain where his office is. His office is generally in Miami. The Southern District of Florida, where I also practice, runs from Fort Pierce, which is about 90 miles or more north of Miami, up the coast, if you will, down to Key West. So from Key West to Fort Pierce with stops in Miami, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm Beach, Fort Pierce. Up in Fort Pierce, there's just one judge. Her name is Aileen Cannon. West Palm's got 2 or 3. Fort Lauderdale's got a bunch. Miami. All different places you can go for your grand jury. You got to go to Fort Pierce about John Brennan, who never lived in Fort Pierce. We don't think so. Let me read to you from the allegations in the letter. And then I'll give you Pam Bondi's response, which I think violates a whole number of rules and ethical edicts. They're requesting the judge out. This is on Mayor Brown letterhead, the lawyers for John Brennan. Disclosure, I've worked with Mayor Brown before. They've represented a client of ours that we are mutually representing. So I know the firm well. I don't know Ken Weinstein, although I will invite him onto Legal AF. This is the letter they wrote. As explained below, this is Dear Chief Judge, it has become clear that irregular activity is taking place in connection with that grand jury investigation about their client, which is affecting our client's right to fair and impartial treatment. One example is the violation of grand jury secrecy rules, like, the Davis comments that we just saw before. Even more troubling and potentially harmful relates to the government's apparent effort to manipulate grand jury and case assignment procedures to ensure that this investigation and any resulting prosecution will be overseen by a particular district judge of its preference. Who could that be? Given the corrosive effect of judge shopping on the perceived fairness and impartiality of the criminal justice system, particularly when conducted by a federal prosecutor, looking at you, Jason reading Quinones, we wish to alert the court to the evidence underlying our concern. And as counsel to the identified target of this investigation, we request that Your Honor carefully consider this evidence and the clear inference of prosecutorial judge shopping as you exercise your supervisory authority over the grand jury. See, she's got the right to intervene in the case and handle the administration of it and reassign it to somebody independent, which is what they are looking for. Randomly assign it away from Judge Cannon. It's not the first time Altanaga has had pressure. When Judge Cannon intervened in the case in the prosecution of Mar-a-Lago against Donald Trump for obstruction of justice and Espionage Act and tried to intervene while the investigation was still ongoing and grand juries were still ongoing, she was slapped back twice by the 11th Circuit, telling her she cannot intervene in the case before it's even an indictment. And there was pressure on Altanaga to take her out of the case, that she had only been a judge for 6 months at the time. She had very little experience because of COVID and other reasons. And so, she didn't at that time. Not at that time. They go on in the letter. They say this is the corruption of the Department of Justice on page 3. The Justice Department has surrendered much of its independence to the president, who is directly commanding his attorney general and her leadership team to use their authorities to go after perceived political enemies. And then they go through all the Eastern District of Virginia issues about the prosecutors getting fired there. It continues about Brennan, the fact that Eastern District of Pennsylvania felt there were no charges against Brennan. Eastern District of Virginia did the same thing. There's also a major problem that's raised in the letter, which is the statute of limitations. Most crimes you have to bring within a certain amount of time or they are time barred. Anything that John Brennan did back in 2016 or even 2020 is time barred. We're talking about 9 to 6 years beyond, and the statute of limitations is 5 years. Then they go over Judge Cannon herself. Now, again, they don't say she's corrupt. I'll just read it out loud. Page 11. Judge Cannon's past decisions. The numerous past decisions by Judge Cannon that could reasonably cause the prosecutors to believe that hers would be an accommodating courtroom for an investigation and possible prosecution of President Trump's perceived political adversaries. We don't suggest that the judge would in fact lean in that direction, but the record of her decisions could provide a basis for the prosecutors believing that she would. Then she goes over all the Mar-a-Lago decisions, firing Jack Smith as a special counsel, blocking the release of volume 2 of the Mar-a-Lago report that he prepared, and the rest, and talks about the corrosive effect of judge shopping. Now, Pam Bondi didn't like this letter, but rather than just respond to the letter, she's had time. Even though there was a holiday break in there, you have time. She hasn't filed a response. And when she does, I'll report on it in MeidasTouch and Legal AF. But, you have a comment that she gives to the media, compounding the problem. They just said one of the problems is the Department of Justice is leaking about the grand jury. And what does Pam Bondi do? Pam Bondi comes on with another leak. She says to a news agency called justthenews.com, public reports of a recent letter sent to the chief judge of the Federal District of Florida. Actually, that's a typo. It's the Southern District of Florida, Pam. Pam, you're a Florida bar member. You know better than that. By John Brennan's defense attorneys seeking judicial intervention in any legitimate grand jury investigation by the executive branch shows these bad actors are clearly concerned about their liability and want to preserve a two-tiered system of justice. Bad actors? Now you're going after the target of the investigation in press reports? That's a violation of your code of conduct, your rules of professional responsibility, the oath that you've taken, an officer of the court, grand jury secrecy rules under Rule 6 of the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure. Shall I go on? It just shows you, it actually plays in. If I'm the lawyers, if I'm Mr. Weinstein, I send another letter to Altanaga citing to this saying, see, Exhibit B. We'll continue to follow it. I'm Michael Popok. I'm glad you're here on the MeidasTouch Network and Legal AF. Slide over to Legal AF, hit the free subscribe button there for the holidays. Help us get to our 2 million target for 2026 of free subscribers. And then come over to Legal AF Substack, where as paid members, you'll be able to see the full 16 pages, and along with a lot of other content you can only get on Legal AF Substack. I'm running a 30% sale on Legal AF Substack between now and the end of the month, 30% off annual membership. Now is the time to become a member and help support our Legal AF community. So until my next report, I'm Michael Popok. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.